So, welcome again, friends. My name is Wendy Cooler, and I am the convener of a project called the Friends Incubator for Public Ministry. You may be familiar with us, you may not be familiar with us. We are a project, first of all. We are under the fiscal sponsorship and spiritual care of Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, which is in Baltimore yearly meeting. We will remain a project until we lay this project down in a few years. And that is because we have one simple mission, and that is to advance the radical claim that Quakers have made for 400 years that we are all ministers in each other's lives. And in addition to that, some of us are called into a public facing ministry and have concerns that we should be sharing with our meetings. Um, to that end, I want to invite you to a couple more events that we'll be having. Um, Later this month, we'll be joined by the creators of a Quaker Spiritual Direction Network, who will talk about, spiritual direction as a public ministry. You can register for that for free on our website, friendsincubator.org. And also, starting later this month is a seven-part series on sort of biblical contemplation as it is relevant to themes in public ministers' lives. And that is being led by Jim Webner. Some of you may remember him from his series on the prophetic imagination. Also, in the month of August, if you like this program and you want more programs like this, you should know that donations to the incubator will be matched by Sandy Spring Friends Meeting up to $10,000. So this is a wonderful time to send us some money. Um, we are attempting to radically expand our programming and particularly a fellowship program that you can read about on our website that's currently only active in the East Coast. We're trying to move to the South, the Midwest, and the West Coast with our fellowship program for meetings and ministers. So with that, I want to introduce you to Ross, who is here, who you're here to see this evening. I'm going to let Ross introduce themselves a little bit, but first, I just want to say Ross grew up in my meeting at Sandy Spring, where I'm sitting today. And I know his mom is among the assembled, and so are at least another member of meeting. But I did not meet Ross as a child. I met Ross as an adult and as a public minister at New York Yearly Meeting, where he is sojourning last year. And I was just incredibly impressed with them, their presence as a public minister, which I think you may find with me goes beyond the actual sort of bread and butter, the ministry itself. Ross, you have a terrific presence and commitment to the welfare of friends, to our spiritual welfare and maturation. So, with that, I want to let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Thank you. Um, in the interest of not having a shaggy dog introduction, I'm just going to read from the bio I've been circulating to meetings and other gatherings of friends here, which reads verbatim: Ross Brubeck is an associate member of Sandy Spring Friends Meeting and a friend in public who has been sojourning at Brooklyn Monthly Meeting since 2024. Starting with the May 2025 walk to Washington, Ross has been working with Brooklyn Quakers in pilgrimage as activism. Ross has served on the organizing committee for two subsequent pilgrimages since then, now broadly known as the Quaker Walk Project. For Ross, this work is an outgrowth of prior commitments to stewardship, as well as creating containers for spirit, which for a number of years has taken the form of working in alternative and sustainable construction. Ross is also an inveterate filmmaker and is carrying camera equipment on the current pilgrimage for the purpose of creating film about the Quaker relationship between prayer and nature.
Thank you, Ross. Um, so I think my first question for you is, you are an organizer of the National Peace Walk. What is that exactly?
It is the well, it's the third pilgrimage that we've organized as a group of friends in Brooklyn and now more broadly. National in the sense that it is intending to cross many parts of the continent that we call the United States, or the part of it that we call the United States. It's a it's an effort to meet with friends, Quakers, and other folks that are working in peace work and living in communities of intention and communities of action, um, to talk in an unmediated way um, about where our power actually lies. Um, and this is during a time, I think, when folks are seeking some form of power to counteract what we recognize as um, harmful harmful power in harmful use of power. Um, and it's also an opportunity to participate in tradition that is 400 years old, as you mentioned. It's an opportunity to participate in something, to be within a living tradition while it's still possible, and to take what might seem like a closing window of opportunity and prop it open for a little bit longer, by a demonstration and an application of faith. Um, so I've walked alone and accompanied for about 3 months, 2 weeks and or sorry, 2 months and 3 weeks. The number of miles walk is about 1,100 at this point from Brooklyn. Brooklyn Monthly Meeting, 110 Skirmerhorn in downtown Brooklyn. I'm in Comer, Georgia right now. I am across the street from Jubilee Partners, which is an intentional community that is part of a 60-year stewardship project and um, uh, an organizing effort to help settle and integrate refugees in the United States. They've been doing this since sort of branching off from Koinonia Farms, which itself has a long history of activism outside of Atlanta. And this is about the southernmost point of the walk. The walk is intended to reach Minneapolis by November. And as it stands, we're kind of describing a big V throughout the United States. And that's mostly because we left without any intended destination, as a way to employ I don't know, um, the wayfinding mode of expectant waiting, and having the path actually revealed to us. And the revealed path is towards Minneapolis. Minneapolis being the place where I think there's been the most acute and prolonged encounter with state violence at the hands of ICE, and has very unfortunately fallen out of the news cycle a bit too early, as most things do in lieu of newer and worse news, or newer seeming or worse seeming news. And the route from actually Atlanta is going to go to Chattanooga, Knoxville, Lexington, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, La Crosse, and Minneapolis. Um, and then I'll decide where to go from there.
Yeah, so as you were describing the National Peace Walk, I heard you talk a lot about faith. and this being a faith journey. And near the end, I heard you talk about expectant waiting. I wonder if you can explore what faith and expectant waiting mean to you, and how they have shaped your public ministry.
Well, d discovering space, um, like encountering space or scale as it's represented by space is is something that's required waiting. Um, the act of travel that we are accustomed to in the United States is through, using our private vehicles, our cars. Um, and that really shrinks space and it really shrinks time. And it it removes a lot of well, it changes the form of waiting that we do when it comes to finding a destination. Um, in my experience, I found that it has made the act of waiting um, really flat and unbearable. And driving in a vehicle that is to get from one place to another, expediting your travel or expediting your wayfinding is something that has made for me the act of going from point A to point B in space or time or within a problem really unbearable because it doesn't feel like I am actually present in it. Um I found this kind of, I mean, it's I didn't find it, I didn't discover it, but like what I've encountered pretty often on this trip is this kind of triad of functions of well, I'm not sure what they're functions of, but the relationship between space and time and money are all pretty interrelated. And the um the the distance covered, the distance traversed in space is, you know, often done at the expense of time and money and, you know, vice versa. They're all very interrelated. Um, and I've chosen in this walk to be as immersed in space and time um as is naturally possible, like as far as I have been able to discern, like this is as close to a like a one-to-one relationship with space and time as I've been able to get, and that's at the expense of money. Like I haven't been um I haven't had a relationship with money as in the same way that I have prior in my life in doing this trip. I've not been making any money. I've given up the opportunity to make money in order to have a relationship to space and time because it is giving me an understanding of what the actual pace of of an arrival feels like. And that's entirely analogous with waiting for an answer to come to you. The you know the distances that we're covering every day are about 15 to 20 miles, so that's pretty regular. But within those distances, there's a big question of where we're going to find certain forms of relief, like rest, or water, or food, or company, fellowship, and um, not knowing when those are going to happen, and not needing to know when those are going to happen, knowing that they will arrive if I am continually applying the faith that they will, um, is a kind of healthy relationship to time and space that I've not had the opportunity to come into yet in my life. Not on a regular basis, not for 3 months straight. Um, and yeah, if there's something I'm bringing back from this, if there are things, since there will be things that I'm bringing back from this, I've recognized that as something I hope to carry forward once I'm finished, is that an immediate answer. or an immediate solution um, is a little bereft spiritually. It doesn't really contain a lot. Um, and the more space and time you give something, the more it's able to contain.
I'm um I'm hearing in the testimony you're sharing this evening and not for the first time, um, a kind of longing for connection. Um, I mean, I hear you talking about communing with reality, with the reality of space and time, being immersed, you said. Um, and you use the word relationship a lot, that you are in relationship to your body, to the need for rest, for food, for water. You are in relationship with the companions that you are walking with. You are met by people who are inviting you into relationship. um, you are in relationship, I think, in your waiting. You are in relationship to an answer that will come to you. I think that the way I'm interpreting what you said, and you can tell me if I'm just wrong about this, is that is what faith is. That you know that these things will come to you. Um, and you can have this faith in not knowing exactly when these things will arrive, but they will. And there is a kind of poverty that you are describing as a part of that. Chosen the side of the triangle that is money that will make things more efficient. And I hear you sort of saying that in the inefficiency is where there is connection and meaning and an opportunity to grow in faithfulness. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
things should take time. Things th if I don't know, I would say that like a story about human civilization and the development of human civilization has been around finding more efficient ways to do things.
Hmm.
Um, that's obvious. But what is it costing in addition to money? It's I've found that it's costing a right relationship to time. Um, and that the time that we have is um like accountable in some way, that
Hmm.
we would have only a certain number of units of time per day to spend on our lives, and maximizing the value of those units through things like a washing machine or a vacuum cleaner would give us more of this imaginary a portion of time. Um, I've been washing my clothes by hand almost every night on this trip. A lot of the nights that we've spent have been outside, or away from civilization, amenities and hospitality. There's great hospitality between New York and DC. There's a tremendous amount of Quakers there. And just about every night we had a place to stay between New York and DC. But beyond that, south of that, until Richmond, there was a single Quaker meeting that we passed through. And
Hmm.
sorry, Raleigh, between Raleigh and DC, there was Richmond. That was a single one. Across North Carolina, there was a decent amount. Through Appalachia, we spent. I just spent 8 days walking through the wilderness, and um, arrived in Comer, Georgia last night or yesterday afternoon. Um, and during that time, I was at a certain point walking along a trail in not exactly primordial, but like relatively primordial wilderness. It was the gorgeous national park in southern North Carolina, Appalachia, southeastern North Carolina, southwestern that is, and a 70-mile trail, which we took about 25 miles of, called the Foothills Trail. Uh, and we at us, spent 2 nights there, and one of the nights was spent next to a river or a creek called Bear Creek, and it was an enormously exhausting day. And I think on days that were similarly exhausting, within civilization, I would probably return home and make something very quickly for dinner. Um, and take a shower, either take a shower very quickly or put off taking a shower until like 1:30 in the morning after I'd spent a lot of time just doing absolutely nothing on my computer,
Mhm.
looking at YouTube or something, and then fallen asleep way too late and woken up feeling like shit. Um, on the Foothills Trail, after walking for 20 miles up an unnecessary amount of inclines, and like the way they built that trail is like unnecessarily difficult because they're trail builders and they want to have fun in the woods. Um, but we arrived at the Bear Creek campsite, and it had this really gorgeous little creek that was washing alongside next to it, that previous campers had kind of altered a little bit. I don't know how ethical this is, but it like just putting rocks in certain places to direct the stream, and but there was some enormous boulders there that created little bathtubs. And um I sat in one for about 45 minutes washing my clothes and just kind of like wondering what a bathtub was, like where it came from, why we have them, and then like on and on, like where certain other technologies emerged that either recreated or simulated an experience that I was having, or bypassed it entirely for the sake of some other action that was deemed more valuable. But I was in the river washing my clothes until night fell, and then I went to sleep and slept very well. And yeah, none of that was sufficient. I would not have been, um if I was, still required to work 40 hours a week, I would not have elected to spend an entire hour bathing and washing my clothes, and um even before I had a chance to eat dinner or anything like that. I would have to find more efficient and less um like embodied, less, I don't know, spiritually rich ways to engage with daily tasks.
Mhm. Yeah. So the name of this presentation is The Loneliness of the Pilgrim. And up until now, I feel that you've spoken a lot about connection, and the connection you found in the wilderness. Can you take a moment to explain what you mean by a loneliness that you might be experiencing?
Well, I've talked a lot. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different meetings of Quakers and other folks. A lot of times during the conversation, act of the act and tradition and practice of experimentation has come up. Um, and I think that a lot of that act of experimentation, a lot of the practice of experimentation has to do with putting yourself into a place that you don't quite understand, and willingly being in a place that others don't either. Um, and also being in a place where you don't really recognize the world or yourself. Um, and then within that, finding where the actual narrative is, like where the thread is, where the warp and the weft is, um, so that you can translate it into something that is uh legible. Um, I said for a while, and I still kind of stand by this, that I don't quite know what is happening with the walk. Like I don't quite know why it's happening. And I'm also in a place where I don't really recognize myself. Like I did, it's quite coherent with a lot of other things that I've done, but it's not really something that I know how to like present to people very well yet. Especially folks that I've known for a long time, especially some folks that I've known for a long time. Like I'm thinking a lot about like friends that I've known, who might see me posting on Instagram about being a public minister, and that being a really odd left turn for me. Um, and I don't know, I still don't entirely claim the title because I think that there's a lot of um cultural baggage with titles, and the authority that they bestow. And um that kind of alienation from the actual thing that I'm doing, and that kind of dissonance, and that kind of emotional dissonance, is something that has made it a little difficult for me to really embody the thing and really turn and face the thing, um, and really like actually create the narrative, or discern the narrative that, whether or not I want to recognize it or not. Yeah, whether or not I want to recognize it, I'm still like walking towards. Um, and that's all very abstract. There's much more literal forms of loneliness. Like I did just spend 8 days walking in the wilderness. I had a companion, my friend Julian, who's a very experienced long distance walker, and I was glad to have him along with me. But there are other times when I've been walking unaccompanied and not really remembered why I was going to where I was going. Um, because it is, I don't know, this is not very, it's not easy to really summarize what it is that's happening with the walk. And I think that if this is a period of public ministry, if this is a period of public messaging, describing what it is that's motivating this, it takes a lot of time. And it takes sometimes an hour, like that very Quakerly unit of time, or that very like Excite unit of time. But it's also like it might take 6 months to describe, and it might not be something that can be communicated, and that there's, I don't know, there's something there about like I've had a lot of trips in my life, and I've had a lot of trips that have been very difficult to describe in a way that was legible and entertaining. It's like describing a dream. You don't really want to tell people your dreams because they're so boring to hear. But the actual scale of the thing that I'm engaged in, like is worthy of some faithful descriptions and some entertaining description. But it's hard to know that I actually have the capability to deliver that as a story. Um, and sometimes when I'm walking between meetings, and those walks are 7 days, um, it's hard to know that when I arrive, the actual experience that I'm having will be faithfully communicated, either verbally in my words or in the implicit nature of having arrived there in the way that I've done. So it's hard to know if there's more connection ahead, I think. And that's where some loneliness comes in. Um, it's hard to know if there's meaning ahead. Like if the meaning that I've encountered um is all that I'll get, and the rest of it will just be like one foot in from the other. But as time goes on, it's been disproven. Like as time goes on, it's I've seen more and more that there is a seasonal nature to this. There are moments that are entirely spring-like, um, and last for a lot longer than I think they will. And there's times when a lot of the actual headiness of this recedes, and it's just drudgery, and that's quite all right too, because yeah, it's labor, and I'm happy to say that it's labor that I don't feel. It's some of the only labor that I don't feel like alienated from.
Hmm. Yeah. So, can I repeat back some of the things I think I'm hearing and see if they're right?
Sure.
Um, well, it sounds to me like you're saying, you used words like disorientation is a part of experimentation. And you talked about creating a narrative, and then you corrected yourself and said discern the narrative. Um, and and it sounded like you were struggling. Like when you described how, a dream is a personal thing. You might have some dream that is deeply meaningful to you. It feels like something. It has its own dream logic. But using words to describe it to someone else, even someone you're close to, they find the dream boring. It's just not as intriguing to them. It's not something you can share. And it sounds like you're struggling to share what this experience is with your community, um, the community of Quakers broadly. Um, and I heard you talk about something that's different, but sort of related, maybe, about our anxiety about titles. Um, and how you're not entirely comfortable using the phrase public minister, um, because friends and others might react badly to that it comes with this baggage you were talking about. And so that's a part of what is difficult to communicate to other people. And it just sort of sounds like I'm hearing you feel very connected, and then paradoxically very disconnected, from the people in your spiritual community. Um, is that true?
Yeah, it's true. Um, and I think that's part of what's been an interesting challenge about the work. Um,
Mhm.
I'd like to think that there's a range of reactions that the things that I do would elicit. Um, I don't want, a 100% positive reception for everything that happens. And the ways that this being the pilgrimage work that began at Brooklyn has created concerns uh in friends, um has been interesting, and it has dampened my ability to um I don't know, act or be live freely amongst this. And I think that's okay. Because I also know that nothing, no state is permanent. There is no such thing as stasis. Everything is going to change,
Hmm.
including the ways that I feel about the things that I'm doing and the ways that other people feel about the things that I'm doing. But yeah, I mean that this is hard to talk about because it involves personal information from a person that's not me, but this personal information has been readily divulged on a number of occasions. There is a particular bit of concern that has come up around the work that I've done um, from a friend who themselves experienced, I think, very significant adversity, and I would go as far to say trauma, religious trauma, from a prior community, a community prior to the Society of Friends. Um, and that experience left an impression that is yet to kind of like even out. It would appear because a lot of the concerns raised around the pilgrimage work that we've been doing was centered around the titles that
Mm-hmm.
being recognized um, through, which
Mm-hmm.
which is public minister. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and these titles in other segments of Christian society carry authority. They denote a figure of authority, and that's not the
Mm-hmm.
case in Quakerism. It is, yeah, as you mentioned at the start, it's a title that is shared by all. Um, as soon as there is some application of faith towards community. Um,
Mm-hmm. It sounds like you have a lot of sympathy for those that you labor with.
They got God in them too, don't they? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's but it takes a while to reach that sympathetic state. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also not not permanent. Like if there was the same conflict, with the same characters and delivered in the same tone and tenor again, like I would probably like be a little bit less understanding. But it hasn't, like, whatever the conflict was, it gave me some time to slow down on what I was doing. Like personally,
Mm-hmm.
it gave me some time. It gave me time. And it
Mm-hmm.
created space and I wish I could say it gave me money, but like it's something that yeah, created a little container that I kept with me for a while. And um of all the things that I've made throughout my life, they've always, if they've contained something energetic, then they've had a value.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad to have had that as a portion of this labor.
Well, they introduced inefficiency
Yeah,
in your labor with them.
yeah,
But, it also has had real consequences. When we were talking before this started, you were expressing to me some of the places you might like to go with this. Is it okay if I remind you of some of the things you said?
yeah, sure.
Um, you said you kind of wanted to explain the idea or feeling of loneliness itself. And you said you wanted to make sure not to portray yourself as being in an unfortunate position, that you are in a position that you have chosen willingly. Oh, did I go away?
You're back.
Okay. Um, what was the last thing you heard me say, Ross?
That I did not wish to be portrayed as someone who's been placed into an unfortunate position because these are decisions that I've made willingly.
Yes, and also the opposite. They're hardly a decision. That's
Mhm.
hardly a choice. Um, and you said the final thing I took a note about was that you strongly wanted to destigmatize loneliness as a bad thing. That perhaps loneliness is something that we need to labor with in ourselves. Are those still things you want to explore?
Yeah. And I want to try and find a way to talk a little bit about the some of the more explicit facets of the mission of this walk
Mm-hmm.
while I do that because um I mean I do find myself wandering a lot through all of the various ways that this action of walking manifests and there are it becomes very omnidirectional very easily. The the thing that I'm trying to do, at least personally, is create a model of what it is to exist outside of systems of oppression and extraction um, in walking. And like the idea of being lonely during these times is, I don't know, it like we've met a lot of very lonely seeming people or folks that you would probably assume are lonely along the way. There was a person who stopped us as we were walking through northern Georgia. I don't remember the town, but his name um I think it was Steve Wells. He stopped us as we were walking down the road and just living in a trailer by himself um and talked for a very long time. Talked for a very long time. And we had a very long conversation. I was very glad to stop and have a very long conversation about his life and the ways that he has not been able to find success, not been able to find like stability. He's taken, it seems like a lot of losses in his life, and um, still at a certain point, he just said very plainly that he is free. And I think that he's found in his own way at great expense where solitude, like what the application of solitude is when needing to protect yourself from a toxic society. Um, like where isolation and um yeah, where isolation comes into the factor, where isolation factors into uh not being out of reach of the things that wish to extract from us and that that demand more than we're able to give. At one point he was talking very proudly about how he hasn't had a job in a very long time, and that's like a point of shame that was like programmed into us as a point of shame, not being employed, and as if that's some kind of rejection from the society that we're in, not being employable or not being employed. But he was living very, very simply. Um, and he was surrounded by some very gorgeous nature, like northern Georgia is very gorgeous part of the world. Um, and he didn't seem unhappy. Like I don't know how often loneliness is actually supposed to be coupled with unhappiness. Um, I found that it's not there is not a total parity between those things. I think there is some distance between them in a lot of ways. I've seen it so often, and like I've even people who are clustered against one another. I spent nearly 2 years in New York City, just millions of lonely people there, who were directly next to one another, and yeah, incredibly unhappy as well. Not to say that happiness is unattainable in New York, but it requires a lot of money, and not having that, not having access to that, um, does create this kind of loneliness that is accompanied by I don't know, various shades of misery. It's entirely different to be alone and or lonely in the woods, and in healthy woods, like healthy woods that have clear water that you can drink and bathe in. Um,
Thank you, Ross. I feel like I don't have any more questions. I'm wondering if your heart is clear, if there's anything more you'd like to say.
well, this is a messaging campaign. Like this is a an effort towards making a spectacle of myself, for the sake of garnering attention towards a thing. Um, and there is an amount of loneliness there that's hard, that's kind of hard to talk about because it feels self-centered. And that self-centeredness is entirely, I think that is born from the fact that this is a like a very shoestring skeleton crew operation. It's myself and co-organizer Kristen, who's in the audience, coordinating all of the stops and making all the calls and sending all the emails. Um, there is an anchor committee that meets every other week when I don't forget about it, but I've forgotten about it twice because I am the only one at times walking. Um, and now it's coming into the kind of back half of the actual action. And that means now that I have time which is like accounted for. It is um quantitative time. It's like a quantifiable time left to disseminate the message that I'm carrying to Minneapolis, which again it is the place that has had the best chance to learn how to protect itself against state violence. And if state violence is a thing that is becoming more and more of a reality and will become more and more of a reality, globally, but within the United States, it is Minneapolis that we can learn the most from. And it is Minneapolis that we should be, and the Twin Cities, I should say, that we should be directing our attention to. So there is a particular facet of this mission which might or might not be fulfilled because of how incredibly difficult it is to get media attention for this, and also attention from friends and folks who are ostensibly aligned with this and part of this project. Big, everyone's lives are busy, of course. Nobody can walk for 6 months at a time. Very few of us can walk for 6 months at a time. There's a tremendously chaotic and like, fast-paced news cycle that it's very hard to like find purchase in. But there's also, just to speak on like loneliness again, there is something that feels ineffective about the way that I've been going about this because I've not been able to get some kind of headline about this. And I've sent, 30 emails. I've cold emailed like 30 different news outlets without, and some of them are Quaker, without um, response. And a um an article submitted to Friends Journal right now. I'm really like it's kind of the only place it can go. I really like the writing that I've done and um it would go a long way towards bringing some attention to what we are doing. But yeah, at this point, it's hard not to worry halfway through it that this will be a mostly solitary, um, at times accompanied camping trip.
Can we hold you in the light and have some worship together? I'm going to turn the recording off.